Make me look good.
Well, I'm going to do something I wouldn't normally do, which is say something before I read the actually, which is that. So I've been here for 2 years, and I worked with Ian for those 2 years, and every time one thing comes out of my mouth, Ian says the other thing. We have a kind of game going on like that. But despite that, I think that you are a brilliant, brilliant guy, and I believe in you. But more importantly, perhaps, I believe in your work. I really do. And I think you were given a bad piece of advice once by a writer who I will not name, but I think that you're doing something important and you should keep doing it. And then I'll just read your thing. A lowly bartender, a strung-out painter, a writer who hates every word he writes. These are the characters espousing their philosophies in the pages of Ian Lindsay's fiction. These characters, full of regret, doubt, and self-loathing, are what make Ian's stories different. In an era when fiction writers are told to avoid philosophies, Ian Lindsay's work, full up with them, reminds us that all of us have them, these philosophies. That all of us are full of piss and vinegar. And this, Ian Lindsay knows, this is what makes us unique, individual, worthy of having our stories told. Ian Lindsay. Yeah.
Yeah, Chopin, that was really emotional.
We can hug it out after.
All right, over here. That was manly. I'll be here from the creative writing department, Professor Chopin, Professor Scott Ward, Casey Wolf, Helen Wallace. You guys have all been great. All my peers, creative writing majors.
Yeah!
They're going to be like anthropology majors or some shit.
Hey, don't hit him.
Alright, so I'll be reading a scene from a series that I'm writing, and the short story is called I Am Not Salvador Dali. Years later, Dali showed up at his own surrealist house party wearing a full scuba diving suit, complete with fins that slapped the floor clumsily when he walked. Gala, his muse and wife, was also dressed in a diving suit, but she had the sense not to wear the helmet or fins. They were suffocating. Joan and Eugenio, Dali's surrealist contemporaries, were there too, dressed in normal clothes, even though it was his house and his party. Dali had not yet emerged. An hour and a half into the party, they were all drinking and socializing. Eugenio would propose a movie or a statue he had seen, and Joan would shut it down, proclaiming it a waste of human intellect. The drier the wine, the better the taste, Joan said. His endless forehead wrinkles stacked upon each other. No friend of mine can put white wine to his lips, not one with red as far as superior in taste and in health. He tilted the glass upward and gulped the rest of it down. Now where is Salvador? We have been waiting in this house for hours now. Yes, we have, but my friend, as you have just pointed out, we are at least drinking his wine, Eugenio said. Both men smirked. The man's been locked in his studio for the last few months. Said he had a run-in with some blacks, and he is on the brink of a breakthrough. Eugenio looked down and began to feel uncomfortable. I do hope this mirror Salvador has us standing on is strong enough for the weight of this party. Both men looked down at their warped reflections. They could see up their noses and the fat under their chins. Eugenio elbowed Joan's shoulder and gestured for Eugenio to look to his right. In the reflection were the red panties of a woman lost in conversation with a French playwriter. The conch was too small, was absorbing into her curves. Her bottom popped out lushly under her skirt. They laughed. Well, at least now we've had a little excitement since we've been here, Joan said. You think he'll unveil whatever the hell it is he's been working on? I do hope so. His last piece was exquisite, for lack of a better term, the one, the Sphinx, embedded in sand, his form so creative. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it, Eugenio said. Joan rolled his eyes. Found it a little trying. Strange art is still bad art. Then the lights dimmed. The crowd looked around curiously, and the laughter and movement in the room became asphyxiated with darkness. Joan crossed his arms and looked anywhere but his own reflection, glaring up from him from the floor. Presenting a master, said a female voice. The best living painter who has yet to sell out, Salvador Dali. The voice belonged to Gala, who was speaking from a microphone in the back corner. Until that moment, Gala had been playing hostess, keeping the wine and conversation flowing while Dali prepared himself. Joan and Eugenio, who were in the center of the room, could not see her. The lights came back on. Then he walked in, his face red, his body encumbered. The slapping of the scuba fins bounced around the room like an alarm clock that puts the sleeping back into a dream. Tonight, we dive into the subconscious to explore the spontaneous and infinite body of reality so that we can swim went back into the surreal, Gala said in the most celestial voice she could muster. Her accent was thin and Russian, even when she spoke in Spanish. Dolly marched toward the center of the room in a sharp line toward Joan and Eugenio. The guests cleared the way for him by parting toward the walls. The other two surrealists stayed where they were, stuck in their place in front of Dolly as if wax had melted around their feet, hardened, and then adhered to their own reflections in the mirror floor. When he finally reached the man, it was quiet for vulgar fractions of a second. Joanne shouted with quiet. "Can you breathe in that thing?" he asked, the contempt pulled in his voice. Dolly only stood there in front of Joan. Then, with a loud crash, Dolly fell head first in front of the surrealist. The man hit the mirror with such an impact it cracked 6 feet around him, ripped through the reflective floor. A few of the onlookers stepped back. Gala rushed to his side and tore off the scuba helmet. A loud, sonorous noise of air hissed throughout the party. It was the air whistling back into the airtight suit from Dolly had depleted the oxygen. He lay there a moment before a screeching Gala was at his side. "My love, come back," she said, as she started the first kisses of cardiopulmonary resuscitation. After the third kiss, Dolly sat up. The rich nutrient redness of blood shot back into his face and he became less pale by the second. The left side of his handlebar mustache twitched as his nerves awoke. "Dolly lives," he shouted and stood up. He extended his arms over his head in an Olympic gesture of triumph. "Dolly has been the Golden City, the city miles over the hill, and I spat in the face of my angelic mother. All in the name," he repeated, "of art." Then he looked down for effect, very pleased with himself. Applause erupted through the room, followed by quiet, excited conversation. I see he's still referring to himself in third person," Joan said to him, scoffing. Even Eugenio, who, like Joan, was used to Dolly's antics, seemed to be impressed by Dolly's little stunt. Glasses were raised, but there was no toast. Dolly started marching around the room, shouting different proverbial salutes to the guests. He greeted the party, but not stay to listen past his own frenzied shouting. He asked him if he was paying tonight. With an entrance like that, he would be the laughingstock of staying if he doesn't, Eugenio said. "He's already a laughingstock," Joan said downwards, his voice wouldn't project himself too close to the ear of Dolly. The friction between Dolly and Joan had been growing with heat over the past decade. Once Dolly was admitted into the surrealist party, the two painters were at each other's throats, constantly bickering, not with their words, but with their acrylic. It was that unspoken hatred of each other that played the muse for many of both artists' masterpieces. Dolly continued his march and stopped to give Gala an overly sensuous kiss. A kiss that says, "I know you're watching. I know I'm interesting. I know you can't look away." The kiss ended and Dolly beamed at his wife, then raced back to the middle of the room where his helmet was still laying by the broken glass. Shakespeare once spoke the words, "To be or not to be, that is the question." "Dolly is in the middle," he said. As soon as the words came from his mouth, he jumped down to his knees and fastened the helmet back to his suit, rotating the metallic object back into place. He rose slowly. Joan and Dolly met eyes through the transparency of the glass helmet. Dolly gave her a sardonic wink and slowly turned to the other guests of the party. "How long do you think we'll keep that helmet on?" Eugenio asked. "We'll probably run out of oxygen in there in a few minutes." "This clownish behavior is just a distraction. He hasn't completed the painting," Joan said. Dolly was standing a few feet from where he had fallen. A semicircle of people stood in front of him, taking turns fawning over his celebrity. "You're a visionary," a man said. "You live your art out every day. I'll name my first son after you." "Mi amor," a woman, drunk with wine, said. "Dolly, you are magnificent. If you do not have your wife," the woman's voice trailed off, replaced with an empty-headed smile of embarrassment. She brought her hands to her mouth, as if to gag the slurred words from forming. The compliments continued to form from the party. The room had become a mob with the arrival of their host. Dolly could barely hear them. He was focusing on slow, deep, conscious breaths and the notion of weightlessness. Again, his face began turning red. His eyes bulged and his handlebar twitched again. Eugenio and Joan saw this from the back of the crowd. Slowly, he stopped gesturing and shaking hands, and he stopped moving his face altogether. From across the room, Gala began inching forward, trying to push her way past the drunken partiers. Then, just as expected from the sensible minds in the room, not blinded by the tycoon, Dolly stumbled and then once again fell to the mirror. Same reaction, different moment. Gala rescued. Joan rolled his eyes. The clapping of applause were more forced, like death moans of one-trick ponies in the slaughterhouse. The glass floor was now breaking from the weight and tension of the people standing there. The two cracks where Dolly had fallen now met in a 9-foot fracture across the room. Small cracks started surfacing the perimeter of the mirror, and the more the guest moves, the more their reflections distorted. From above, the place must have looked like a Picasso in a broken and frozen lake. Dolly, finally to his feet, was slower to regain his composure, even with the help of Gala, who held him up. He had no words, sodden with grandeur. Joan left Eugenio's side and tiptoed his way across the broken glass to stand before Dolly. "My friend," Joan said, "please stop the charade and show the party what we came to see. Show us your next masterpiece so that we can speak with your paint." "It is not ready," Gala said, speaking for Dolly. Tonight is about lucid experimentation. Joan forced a smile creeping onto his face to stay dormant. What a shame, I was really looking forward to this. We all have, Joan said, gesturing around the room, making sure to meet the eyes with his surrealist companions. When will it be ready? The persistence of memory exists in the genius of Dolly's mind, but has not yet transcended the canvas, Dolly said. Dolly fiddled with his helmet. Joan kept crying. Salvador, my friend, I would hate to hurry a genius, especially one as brilliant as yourself. It takes time to till the field. The dormant smile slithered up across his face, and everything is but his words told the truth. Joan's eyes glazed over, his tongue red with wine scraped from lips side to side. Dolly raised his cup, beginning to screw his helmet back on. Magala shot him a look that only Joan saw. Before the two artists bickering could continue, the woman with the red panties let out a shrill cry of pain. She had cut herself on glass that protruded up from the floor like a stalactite. A river of blood was seeping from the gash just below her knee. She was standing on the left side of Dolly. Dios mío, my God, the woman said, grimacing. She began hobbling around on one foot, which only further crushed the glass. A few men came over to try and help her, but the seeping blood started to pool at the ground. It flowed through the crevices of rubble like a bleeding gorge. The party's eyes went from the glass to Dolly. Aside from the sniffling of the injured woman, the only sound in the room was the clanking metal of Dolly still trying to seal his helmet.